The nurse handed me the folder before I even had my coat off. "You'll want to see this," she said, and something in her voice made my stomach drop. I was 32 years old, standing in the hallway of Meadow Ridge Hospice, holding a folder that would end my marriage. My name is Sarah Whitfield, and 3 days earlier, I had been the woman everyone in my husband's family called a saint. I had quit my job. I had moved into his father's house. I had spent 11 months changing bedpans, reading Louis L'Amour novels out loud until my voice went hoarse, and holding an old man's hand while he forgot, piece by piece, who I was. The folder was from the lawyer. Inside it was a copy of a new will, dated 2 weeks ago, and a set of photographs my father-in-law's private investigator had taken. Photographs of my husband, Daniel, in a hotel parking lot in Charlotte, wrapped around a woman in a red dress who was not me. Her name, I would learn, was Marissa Cole. She ran a boutique marketing firm. She drove a Mercedes. She had never once visited this hospice, never once sat with Daniel's father, Robert, while he cried out for his late wife at 3 in the morning. I sat down right there on the vinyl bench outside room 14, my hands shaking so hard the folder nearly slipped to the floor. Through the door, I could hear Robert's oxygen machine hissing its steady rhythm. He was dying, and my husband was 3 states away with another woman while I held our family together with both hands and no sleep. I want to tell you exactly how I felt in that moment, because I think some of you watching this will know it too. It wasn't just heartbreak. It was rage, and grief, and humiliation, all braided together so tight I couldn't tell where one ended and the next began. But here's the thing nobody expects. Robert knew. My father-in-law, half-conscious most days, barely able to sign his own name, had known about Daniel and Marissa for months. And 2 weeks before I found that folder, he had quietly changed his will. If you're watching this and you've ever felt invisible in your own marriage, drop a comment and let me know where in the world you're watching from tonight. I read every single one. Now let me back up, because you need to understand how I got to that hallway. I met Daniel Whitfield when I was 26, waiting tables at a diner outside Asheville, North Carolina, saving up money for nursing school I never finished. He was charming in that easy, practiced way some men are, the kind of charm that makes you feel like the only person in the room. He ordered black coffee and apple pie every Tuesday for 6 weeks before he asked for my number. My mother, Linda, warned me about him from the start. "That boy smiles too much for someone who works in finance," she used to say, stirring her tea like she was stirring up trouble. My mother had raised me alone after my father left when I was 9, and she had a radar for men who smiled with their mouths but not their eyes. I didn't listen. I was 26 and lonely and tired of being cautious. Daniel's family had money, owed money from his grandfather's textile business, and his father Robert had built it further into a chain of hardware stores across the Carolinas. Daniel's older sister, Kayla, made it clear from our very first Thanksgiving that she didn't think a diner waitress belonged at their table. She'd ask me questions like, "So did you go to college?" and let the sentence hang there, smiling the whole time. Robert was different. Robert liked me. He used to say I reminded him of his late wife, Eleanor, who died of cancer when Daniel was 19. "You've got her stubbornness," he told me once, laughing, the first Christmas after Daniel and I married. Good. This family needs somebody who won't just nod along. For the first 4 years of our marriage, things were good. Not perfect, but good. Daniel worked long hours at his father's company. I picked up shifts at a local clinic as a medical assistant. We talked about kids, someday, when things settled down. They never settled down. Then, 11 months ago, Robert was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. And everything changed. Daniel had a business trip he couldn't miss the week of the diagnosis. Kayla was too busy with her own family in Raleigh to come more than once a month. So it was me who packed a bag and moved into Robert's house on Sycamore Lane, me who learned how to manage his medications, me who sat beside his bed at 2 in the morning when the pain got so bad he couldn't remember his own son's name. I didn't do it for recognition. I did it because I loved that stubborn old man, and because somewhere along the way, caring for him became the realest, most honest thing in my life. Realer than my marriage had felt in a long time, if I'm being truthful with you. Daniel visited on weekends, sometimes. He'd stay an hour, kiss his father's forehead, and disappear back to handle things at the office. I should have asked more questions. I should have noticed how often his phone buzzed with messages he turned face down. I should have noticed a lot of things. Instead, I noticed how tired I was. How my hands smelled like hand sanitizer no matter how much lotion I used. How Robert's eyes lit up every time I walked into his room, and how that made the exhaustion almost worth it. Almost. Standing outside room 14 with that folder in my lap, I finally understood. Robert hadn't been confused these past few weeks when he kept asking his lawyer to visit one more time. He hadn't been rambling when he grabbed my wrist last Tuesday and said, "You take care of what's yours, Sarah. Promise me." He'd been planning something. And whatever it was about to blow my entire family apart. I heard footsteps behind me. I looked up, and standing at the end of the hallway, phone still in his hand, was Daniel. He hadn't seen the folder in my lap yet. But he was about to. "Sarah," he said, smiling that same easy smile he'd used on me for the first time 7 years ago over apple pie. "What are you doing out here? Is Dad okay?" I looked down at the photograph on top of the stack. Red dress. Charlotte parking lot. His hand on her waist. Then I looked back up at my husband and said the only thing I could manage. "Who is Marissa Cole?" I stood there in that hallway, folder shaking in my hands, and I asked Daniel again. "Who is Marissa Cole?" His face went through 3 expressions in under 2 seconds. First confusion, real or fake I couldn't tell. Then a flicker of panic, quick as lightning. Then, finally, the mask came back down, smooth and practiced, the same mask he wore when he sold hardware store franchises to nervous investors. "Sarah, I don't know what you're talking about," he said, stepping closer, reaching for the folder. I pulled it back. "Don't," I said. "Don't you dare lie to me right now. Not here. Not outside your father's room." A nurse passed us in the hallway, eyes down, pretending not to notice. I lowered my voice to a hiss. "Your father hired someone to follow you. There are pictures, Daniel. Charlotte. A hotel parking lot. A woman in a red dress with her hands all over you." He didn't deny it this time. He just closed his eyes and exhaled, the way you do when you finally set down something heavy you'd been carrying too long. "It's not what it looks like," he said, which is what every single person says when it is exactly what it looks like. I want to pause the story here for a second, because I know some of you have lived a version of this moment. That instant where the person you built your whole life around turns into a stranger right in front of your eyes. If that's you, I hope you know you're not alone in this. Keep watching, because it gets worse before it gets better. Let me take you back 6 months, to when I first started noticing the cracks. It began with small things. Daniel started working late more often, 3, sometimes 4 nights a week. He used to text me constantly when we were first married, silly little updates, a photo of his lunch, a joke he heard at the office. That stopped. His phone, which used to sit face up on the kitchen counter, started living in his pocket, screen always dark, always locked. I told myself it was stress. His father was dying. The company was going through a rough patch, or so Daniel said, though I never saw a single financial statement that proved it. I told myself a lot of things that spring, mostly because the alternative was too frightening to look at directly. Kayla, my sister-in-law, noticed too, though not in the way you'd hope a sister would. Instead of being concerned for me, she seemed almost pleased. "Marriage isn't easy, is it?" she said to me one Sunday at Robert's house, watching me change her father's bandages with a kind of detached amusement. Daniel always did get bored fast. Runs in the family. Our father was the same way with our mother, before she passed. I remember staring at her, this woman in an expensive cardigan who hadn't lifted a single finger to help her own father in months, and thinking, you don't get to sit there and judge me. But Kayla had always been like that. Growing up, Daniel told me, she was their mother's favorite, the golden child who got piano lessons and summer camps in Vermont while Daniel got second-hand clothes and lectures about learning responsibility. When their mother died, something in Kayla hardened. She married a wealthy real estate developer named Chip, moved to a gated community in Raleigh, and slowly stopped coming around unless there was money involved. Robert saw it too. "My daughter loves what money can buy her," he told me one night, his voice thin and raspy from the cancer eating away at him. "But you, Sarah. You love people. Don't ever let anybody make you feel small for that." I held on to those words tighter than I realized at the time. It was around that period that my own mother, Linda, started calling more often, worried in that quiet way mothers get when they sense something is wrong before you've said a single word about it. "You sound tired, baby," she said one night on the phone, while I sat in Robert's kitchen at 11 p.m., surrounded by pill organizers and medical paperwork. "Tired in your voice. Not just tired in your body." "I'm fine, Mom," I told her, the same lie I'd been telling myself for weeks. She said, in that way she has that means she doesn't believe a single word but isn't going to push. Well, you know where I am. I should have told her everything right then. I didn't. I think some part of me was terrified that saying it out loud would make it real, and I wasn't ready for it to be real yet. Robert needed me. The house needed me. And somewhere in the middle of taking care of everyone else, I'd forgotten to ask who was taking care of me. Then, about 2 months ago, the calls started. A blocked number, 3 or 4 times a week, always late at night. When I answered, there was silence, then a click. Daniel said it was probably a scam call. I believed him, because believing him was easier than the alternative. It was Robert who finally told me the truth, in his own roundabout, dying old man way. He grabbed my sleeve one evening while I was adjusting his fur drip and said, "Sarah, my son is a fool. I raised a fool." "Robert, don't say that," I said, laughing it off, thinking it was the medication talking. "I mean it," he said, gripping my wrist with more strength than I thought he had left. "Whatever happens to this family after I'm gone, you make sure you're protected. You hear me? Promise me." I promised, mostly to calm him down. I had no idea what he meant. I had no idea he'd already called his lawyer that very week to start rewriting his will. Now, standing in that hallway with Daniel 3 feet away from me, his phone buzzing again in his pocket, I finally understood what Robert had been trying to warn me about all along. "Show me your phone," I said to Daniel. "Sarah, this isn't the place. Show me your phone, or I walk into that room right now and tell your dying father everything I just learned, in front of you." His jaw tightened. For a moment I thought he might actually refuse. Then, slowly, he pulled the phone from his pocket and turned the screen toward me. There, at the top of his messages, was a name I already knew. "Marissa, can't wait for the wedding trip next month. Just us. Tell Sarah whatever you need to." I read it twice to make sure I wasn't imagining it. A wedding trip. Next month. As if I didn't exist. As if 11 months of hospice beds and sleepless nights and holding his father's hand through chemo had all been happening in some other woman's life, not mine. I looked up at Daniel, and for the first time in 7 years of marriage, I felt absolutely nothing when I looked at his face. No love. No anger, even. Just a strange, cold clarity. Get out, I said quietly. Sarah, please, let me explain. That's when Robert's door opened, and a nurse stepped out, her face pale, her eyes finding mine immediately. Sarah, she said. You need to come in here. Now. It's Robert. I pushed past Daniel and ran into Robert's room, my heart slamming against my ribs. The monitors were beeping in a rhythm I'd learned to fear over the past 11 months, too fast, too sharp. A nurse was adjusting his oxygen while another paged the on-call doctor. Robert's eyes fluttered open when I took his hand. He was pale, his lips tinged faintly blue, but he was awake. He was fighting. Sarah, he whispered, so quiet I had to lean close to hear him. Did you see it? The papers. Robert, don't talk right now, just breathe. Did you see it? He insisted, gripping my fingers with surprising strength. Behind me, I heard Daniel's voice, panicked, asking the nurse what was happening, but Robert's eyes stayed fixed on mine, urgent, pleading. The will, Sarah. Did the lawyer send you the will? Yes, I said, tears finally spilling over. Robert, why would you do that? Why would you leave everything to me? He managed a weak, crooked smile, the same stubborn smile Daniel used to have before life and greed had worn it down into something else entirely. Because you're the only one who ever showed up, he said. 11 months, Sarah. 11 months you sat in this room while my own children couldn't be bothered. The doctor arrived then, and the next 20 minutes passed in a blur of medical terms and monitors stabilizing and Daniel hovering uselessly by the door, still clutching his phone like it might save him from what was coming. Robert had suffered a minor cardiac event, brought on by stress, the doctor said. He would recover, this time. But his heart was weakening. Time was running out, and we all knew it. When the room finally cleared and it was just the three of us, Robert looked at his son with an expression I'd never seen on his face before. Not anger, exactly. Something closer to grief. I know about Marissa, Robert said. Daniel's face went white. Dad, I can explain. I don't want your explanation, Robert said, his voice weak but unwavering. I hired a man to follow you 2 months ago because your own wife wouldn't say a bad word about you, even when I could see with my own eyes that something was wrong. 11 months, Sarah changed my sheets and read to me and held a bucket while I got sick from the chemo, and you were in Charlotte planning a wedding trip with a woman half these families never met. Dad, please, not like this. I already called my lawyer, Daniel, Robert continued, and I watched the color drain further from my husband's face. The house, the business shares, my savings. All of it, everything I built with your mother, goes to Sarah. Not to you. Not to Kayla. To the only person in this family who actually acted like family. I sat there frozen, gripping the edge of Robert's blanket, unable to process what I was hearing. Part of me wanted to protest, to say this wasn't why I cared for him, that I never wanted his money. But another part of me, a part I'd buried under years of trying to be agreeable, understood exactly what Robert was doing. He wasn't just rewriting a will. He was finally protecting me, the way no one else in this family ever had. Daniel turned to me, desperate now. Sarah, you have to understand, Marissa doesn't mean anything, it was a mistake, I was stressed, my father was dying, you were always here and I felt so alone. You felt alone, I repeated, and something in me that had been quiet and small for years suddenly stood up straight. I was here every single night, Daniel. I gave up my job. I gave up my own life. And you felt alone. Sarah. Get out, I said again, my voice steadier this time. Get out of this room, and get out of my life. He looked at his father, hoping for some kind of rescue, but Robert only turned his face away. Daniel left without another word, and I remember thinking, in that strange quiet after he was gone, that I had expected to feel shattered. Instead, I felt lighter than I had in months. The weeks that followed were not easy. Kayla called, furious, accusing me of manipulating a dying man, conveniently forgetting the 11 months she'd spent avoiding her own father's hospice room. My mother, Linda, drove up from Asheville the very next day and sat with me on Robert's porch, holding my hand the way she used to when I was small. You did the right thing, she told me. Loving someone shouldn't cost you everything you are. Robert passed away peacefully 6 weeks later, with me by his side, holding his hand just like I had every night for nearly a year. His last words to me were simple. Thank you for staying, Sarah. Not everyone would have. The divorce from Daniel finalized 4 months after that. Marissa, as it turned out, left him within weeks of the affair becoming public, once she realized the inheritance she'd been quietly counting on was never coming her way. Kayla contested the will, of course, but Robert had been meticulous, clear-headed, and it held. I used part of the inheritance to finally finish my nursing degree, the one I'd set aside at 26 for a marriage that cost me more than it ever gave back. I started therapy, something I wish I'd done years earlier, and slowly learned the difference between loving someone and losing yourself completely inside that love. These days, I run a small home hospice care service here in North Carolina, helping families go through what I went through with Robert, but with support I never had. It's strange how grief and betrayal, if you let them, can carve out room for something better. I didn't choose the ending to my marriage. But I did choose what came after it. If you've made it this far, I want to ask you something. Have you ever given everything you had to someone, only to find out they were building a whole other life behind your back? What would you have done in my situation? Would you have stayed silent like I almost did, or spoken up sooner? And one more thing, I'd love to know, where are you watching this from tonight? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one, and I want to hear your story too.